Hi, and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician, aside from playing your instrument, which we kind of take as a given here. My name is Emily Dolan Davis. I am a drummer. I've been playing the drums since 1999. I've been professional since 2008, and I've been helping other musicians to turn pro since 2018, and that is why we're here today. Woo! It is raining outside, it is grey, but I am happy to be doing this for sure. So, first things first, as we are becoming accustomed, time for a shout out, and this is for a wonderful Patreon supporter, I don't know what the right term is. Subscriber? Sure, why not? And it is Stephen Pridmore. Now, he is a fantastic guitarist, songwriter. I just looked back at how long we've been in touch. We've been in touch since 2020, and he has often used my Drum Stem Club stems, which actually technically don't exist. I mean, they do exist, they're on my Dropbox, but the website doesn't exist anymore because it was part of my, to promote my studio, which is now closed, which is a whole thing. It's been a whole journey. I'm going to speak on that at some point, and the kind of, the madness of being, your identity being linked to what you do so strongly. And I'm definitely I want to say victim of that. I don't think victim is the right word, but I definitely have bought into that. I think I'm more comfortable with using those terms. But anyway, today's episode, let's talk about that. So this episode was inspired by someone who wanted me to give them a shout out, but then also did not give me their name. So it makes it quite difficult to remember. If you are sending in any questions, then please do actually say your name. That would be really useful. In fact, whilst I remember, up top, I'm going to say, if you also want to be a Patreon member, go to patreon.com/EmilyDrums, because last episode, I completely forgot to even mention about that, I think. Or maybe it was something else. Anyway, this is what I mean. Too many things. If you would like to suggest an episode subject, then go to emilydrums.com/AMA, and leave your name if you would like me to shout you out. This person, like I say, wanted a shout out, didn't tell me their name, so I don't know what to do with this information, but hopefully you will recognize yourself and you can tell me who you are, because this is a really good subject to talk on. So I'm just going to read exactly what they wrote so we can sort of like go from there. So this was the question, which also was not a question. So this is the other thing. Please ask questions. It just makes it so much easier for me. So burnout. Hyper-focused with lots of expectations on myself to execute. The result is rewarding, but sometimes the process can be grueling. So I'm going to take that as discuss or help me, please. Hyper-focus. So I think I talk quite a lot about hyperfocus, or I have done over these episodes for sure, because it is such a huge part of my way of working, and I think it's just the way I'm wired. It really is. I'm not sure, have I always been this way? I'm trying to think back to when I was a kid. Yeah, I think I'm just that person that when I'm into something, like I am laser focused. Like I would, not so much now actually, but I would get physical symptoms of, like, I want to say anger if someone like interrupted me whilst I was doing my deep work, what I'm going to call now deep work, like as a kid, for instance. Like if I was in the zone and someone interrupted me, I'd find that very difficult to deal with. As I say, I think I'm better now. I don't know, maybe people just don't interrupt me as much, and I certainly sort of put my phone to one side. Speaking of which, literally just got a message. My eye has been caught. I've turned my phone around because that is not okay. I'm here with you. Again, this is my hyper focus. Like when I do these episodes, you know, when I'm working with people, whether it's recording for them, whether it's in a rehearsal, whether it's a set of rehearsals or a tour, or whether I'm coaching with people one-on-one, literally, when I'm with you, I'm with you. There is nothing else that matters to me in the world. I am hyper fixated on you, no pressure. So anyway, I find that obviously there are benefits to hyperfocus, and I certainly have taken it to the extreme, as I feel like this person also has. I think it kind of comes with the territory, this hyperfocus thing. But yeah, so when I tell you I understand so bad, and also to the point of burnout, yeah, that's literally been my professional story for the longest time. And okay, I'll be honest, half of me wears that as a badge of honor. The other half of me now, because I've done a lot of work on stuff like this, the other half of me is not proud at all. And actually, well, no, that isn't the right word. The other half of me wants to reassure that old version of me that you don't need to do that. It's not necessary. And I have my own personal tie-ups with why I've used hyperfocus to really delve into my work. And it's often like, I'm fairly open with you guys, it's often to avoid uncomfortable feelings. Let's just put it as a blanket statement of that, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. That is how I've coped with difficult situations in my life. We all have difficult situations in varying ways, to varying degrees. It's all subjective, blah, blah, blah. My way of dealing with life and honestly avoiding life and avoiding difficult situations, uncomfortable feelings, all of that, I threw myself into work. And initially that was just learning how to play the drums. That's how I literally survived school. I think we can all say to a degree that we survived school. I don't think I know anyone that was like, school was great, I loved it. Everyone struggled in various ways. And that was my way of surviving, was drums. Thank goodness, is all I can say. And then once I sort of left school and got into the real world, as it were, or the adult world, it became about work. And luckily, I suppose, hyperfocus was something that I naturally had anyway. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know to put a name to it. I actually thought it was a negative thing, because all I sort of would focus on in my hyperfocus sessions was when I would get interrupted, and the fact that it was horrible, because I would maybe snap at someone if they did interrupt me, and I don't like that. That's not how I want to be. That's not my natural way of being. Like I know I'm a very compassionate person. I love people. I just, I want to be kind all of the time, often to my detriment, if I'm honest. But yeah, this snapping behavior, I was like, I don't like this. And I didn't like the feeling that I had when I would get interrupted. But anyway, I don't know why I'm sort of going down on this tangent. Maybe it's because you can recognize it too. So as I say, I will say that this hyperfocus sort of thing, and I do think also it's become a bit of a, not a buzzword, but a pop culture kind of phenomenon. And I include myself in that, the fact that I'm using these words and have read books on it, for instance. There's a good book actually that I read that made me realize the power of it. Because as I said, I had it, but I didn't know what it was, and I thought it was a bad thing and all this sort of stuff. That's the other thing, because I would hyperfocus at the end of a session, I would feel so exhausted. And to me, like, I don't know whether you have this, but now that I'm thinking about it, I often remember the negative feelings that come along with it, not necessarily the benefits of it. So I would just remember those negative feelings. Anyway, I read this book called Deep Work by, I think it's Cal Newport, I'm pretty certain it is. And that book completely made me understand not just what was happening, but the power of it, and also how to harness it in terms of, it's essentially just if I remember rightly, it's been a long time since I read this book, and I've probably, created my own narrative off the back of it, but as I remember it, it's kind of this notion of, right, hyperfocus, deep work, as he calls it, is about doing singular tasks, which is incredibly hard. I actually find that very difficult unless I'm really in the mood to hyperfocus, right? And I think a lot of us are like that. But anyway, it was about harnessing this idea of doing singular work. And just to put a name to it, to understand it, to see it as not a negative but a positive was great. However, there is always a flip side. So what I will say is this hyper-focus sort of thing that I have, I will attribute that to a lot of the reasons that I'm able to, how do I say this? like enter into lots of different areas of music, of study, of like just enriching my life, whether that be starting a business, for instance, or starting multiple businesses at this stage, and then also things like creating my one-woman show, or, you know, just generally learning the drums, or, you know, doing things like making websites, which I'll come back to because I always have this anyway, I'll come back to that. But yeah, I think that quality is one of the biggest reasons I've been able to create things, because I am able to just sit and focus. I mean, doing this podcast, great example. Like, I just know, right, I'm about to have a hyper focus session where I do this. And I know that I have that capability. Equally, I also know what I need to watch out for to make sure that the negatives are negated. I think there will always be positives and negatives to everything in life. I don't believe that anything is inherently positive or negative. Plus, you also have interpretation and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, let's talk about the pitfalls that come with hyperfocus. There's benefits, and I've reaped the rewards of those benefits. I continue to. But in terms of the downfalls, the pitfalls, whatever, as this person has mentioned, burnout is the biggest one, because I don't know about you, but when you get hyper focused, you lose all sense of time, you lose all sense of what you might be feeling, you lose all sense of things like, am I hungry? Do I need to eat? And you get to a point where you're so depleted, but by the time you come out of that hyper focus session, your body is just like, what have you done to me? Like, you have neglected me. And then you're like, why do I feel so tired? Why do I feel so wrecked? I feel rubbish. Now I have to like lie down for the rest of the day. It's not sustainable. It's absolutely awful. Like, and also, so there's that, which in itself is a short-term kind of issue, and it can turn into long-term issues if you're gunning it. Say every day you're doing hyper-focus sessions for like hours on end and you're not actually stopping to do a sense check, essentially. The other thing that I find that happens, going back to this website thing, because I don't know why, it's just I have this across so many different areas of my work, but websites always catch me out. Always, whenever I'm doing any work on my website, I often will find myself fixating, hyper-focusing on something that is so insignificant in the bigger picture, but I will spend hours getting it right in inverted commas. But often what will happen, one of two things will happen. In fact, maybe one of three things will happen. Either, I'm not going to say, all right, a number of things will happen, because I don't know how many things happen until I get there. But either I will face a problem, and it can be a tiny little thing, but it's like it grabs hold of my soul, and it's like that discomfort. It's that discomfort, a similar feeling actually to when someone interrupts me when I'm doing hyper-focused work, and it's like it grabs hold of me with its claws, and there's this insatiable need to fix whatever this thing is. Like, I want it this way, but it is happening in this way. How do I make it do what I want it to do? And I will, like I say, hyper focus, sometimes for hours. And when I tell you, this thing could be something very big, very global in terms of a website, like it can be, I don't know, a database, say. And this is going to really affect the usability of the website and people's experience. Or it can be something absolutely tiny and pretty insignificant, like the shape of a button. Now, or the color of a button. Now, let me tell you, of course, there's psychological things about different colors being used and blah, blah, blah. But in the grand scheme of things, the color of a button is not going to change my life. But when I tell you, I have spent hours trying to change colors of buttons. These days it's a lot easier, but hours. Sometimes I find a way, sometimes I don't. So therefore, the end result is either I find a way after hours of work. And what do you reckon my response is after those hours of work? Do you think I'm like, oh, yay, I did that? Okay, yeah, maybe for like a second, literally a second. And then afterwards, what happens is I look at it and I go, this doesn't actually matter. This doesn't, why have I just spent 4 hours looking up CSS and HTML and Like, why am I doing this to myself? Why have I done that? I've just wasted all that time. Oh, and by the way, I still have this database to do that is actually important, but I've just fixated because I thought it would be the quick win, which is also a pitfall. Like, trying to do the easy stuff first is never good, but I think that might be a whole new episode, so I won't go too deep into that. So there's that. Either I will come at it and I will be like, right, it's done, yay, and then, oh my God, I've just wasted half a day, or I will not find a way. And it's like I'm just realizing this, I have issue with, well, I kind of knew this already, I have issues with things not being tied up, like things being left unfinished. I find really hard to deal with because I don't know, I just don't like it. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. I think that's why I get so behind on my emails and messages on my Instagram, is because it's endlessly not tied up. It will never be tied up. It will never be finished, and I don't like that. It makes it very hard to even approach, I think. So I think I need to work on that. I think I need to find a way to be okay with that. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at with it. And then, as I say, sometimes, this is the other thing, I will hyper-focus so much on something and I'll go so far down the road. Now, this can be within a day session, or this can be a week later, or this can be a year later. I have experienced all of these timelines and everything in between and more. And you get to, like, not the other side of all this hyper focus work, because I think that, you know, it's endless essentially. And I go, why have I just done all that? I don't think I even want to be here. So there's kind of this hyper focus on the mechanics of actually doing the work versus actually noticing, do I want to be in the direction that I'm going? Am I on the right path? Like, is this still the goal? I can't tell, it's not embarrassing. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've got to a goal and gone, I don't think I want to be here. I think I want to pivot. Pivot. So that's kind of my experience with the pitfalls, at least. And like I say, I think burnout is the biggest one because, you know, this is the other thing. If you get to the end of a goal and then you're exhausted as well and you're like, oh my gosh, I just did all this work. I literally just can't do anything right now. I am exhausted. Like, I don't even want to be here. I need to pivot. I don't have the energy. Oh my God. Like, it all just will come at once. That is often my experience. So I don't know if the person that was asked this has kind of like also experienced this, but let me tell you, it ain't fun. It's not fun at all. But like I say, there's benefits, there's downfalls. It's the duality of life. So I would like to share with you what I do to help minimize the kind of the downsides of hyperfocus, and yeah, how I maximize the benefits, because it's beneficial. Like, there's no doubt about it. If it's something that you already have, if it's something, like I say, maybe hyperfocus isn't the right word. I think singular task focusing is actually a better way of putting it, because I feel like making it hyperfocus makes it this thing that if you're not in a very hyper kind of fixation, obsessive headspace, that makes it, if you're not in that headspace, then it makes it less valuable. It doesn't, like, there's a whole wide spectrum of what I consider hyperfocus. So let's just call it singular task focusing, because I feel that, like, we can all do that. We can all switch off our phone or turn over our phones and we don't see that it's lighting up. We can all make sure that all of our windows are closed on our computer, apart from what we're actually doing. We can all be present to a point. And I do find that, you know, it's a really good way of working. It is the most effective way of working for me in terms of getting stuff done. But then there is this balance of making sure that it's not too much. Not the extreme, Emily, not the extreme, because I am the extreme. That is me. I am an extreme person. Someone revealed to me that apparently I'm a very intense person. Didn't know that. And then my sister went, yeah, you're really intense. I was like, oh, am I? I didn't realise I was intense until literally like 2 weeks ago. Anyway, the things we learn about ourselves, but I am what I am, what can I say? So how do I deal with hyperfocus? How do I minimize the pitfalls? The best thing I've found, honestly, the most sustainable thing that I found, I've spoken about this before, is using something like the Pomodoro technique. So this is where you have sessions of working for 25 minutes, then a break for 5 minutes, then you'll do that, repeat that 4 times, and then you'll have a break for half an hour, and maybe do that twice if you want to do like 8 hours work. Have I got that right? Is that? So yeah, 4 blocks, 2 rounds. Yeah, so that's 8 hours work. But in the in-between, I will make sure that I get up from my desk, I will walk around, I will just check in with myself. Am I thirsty? You know, drink some water, or like, you know, am I hungry? I'll eat a banana. You know what I mean? Just allowing myself that moment to just go, okay, breathe. And I think initially there was a big fear for me, and I sometimes still have this actually, where when I'm doing hyperfocus work and I need to do it, and maybe it's taken me some time to build up to actually tackle it. I'll be honest, recording this episode, it's taken me, I should have done this. I was planning originally to do this on Tuesday. It's now Thursday. So it's taken me 2 days to build up to this. And yeah, sometimes it just does. And I used to have this fear that if I used the Pomodoro technique, I would get into it. But then after the 25 minutes with that 5-minute break, I would be scared that it would almost break the spell. And that by stopping for 5 minutes, it would be as hard as starting again. But actually, that's not how it rolls. What happens is you are forced to stop. It's often in the middle of something. What I will say as well, keep a notes app or something, or literally a pad and paper, and just write down where you were if you feel like you're not sure where you left off, just so you can come back to it exactly where you were. But what happens is, what happens is you actually almost develop a craving to come back to it, because again, maybe this is a me thing, because it's unfinished and it makes you drawn back to it. So you take 5 minutes, maybe you stretch, that's another good thing to do, or maybe do some, like, I don't know, a little bit of calisthenics, do some squats, do some push-ups, whatever. Depends on the day for me, but I will often do an array of different things. Put on some washing, that's often what I do as well. A little bit of housework, perfect. Things that are just, you know, put away some things. So yeah, I find that those are really good ways to break up the 25 minutes, and then half an hour breaks, I will have like my lunch or whatever, something like that. I will have a meal. Now this sort of, there's something that sprung to mind when I was saying about this sort of craving to come back to it and leaving things halfway done, not halfway done, but, you know, leaving on a point that it's not finished. It reminds me of, so there's an author called Haruki Murakami, and he is a fantastic author. If you are into any sort of Japanese anything, all his book, I mean, he himself is Japanese, and he writes in Japanese. They are translated books, but yeah, if you're into Japan in any sort of way, his books are all set in Japan. Well, all the ones that I've read at least, and they are fantastic. Like, they are so out there. I just love them. He's very visually, it just works me visually. I love his words. Anyway, he wrote a non-fiction book about how he writes, and part of his thing, I'm sure it was him, I'm almost certain it was him, he would always stop writing. He would never stop writing when he felt like, oh, I'm done, I just need to stop. He always finished writing when he still wanted to write, which meant that he came back to it every day, like with this kind of energy, you know, and he was like, yeah, I want to carry on because I didn't finish it. And he felt good when he left his pages every day. And I think that there's something about that. And the Pomodoro technique kind of artificially brings that to the table. it's very, very useful, I think. And as I say, it's exactly the opposite of the experience that I thought I would have with it, which I find very interesting. And it's something that I try to bring into other aspects of my life, of just try it and see, rather than speculating, because I feel like we're all so good at speculating as to what will happen. And we will spend, and I know I do this, I will spend all my energy trying to find out the information rather than just experiencing the situation and finding out for myself. It's a way to keep us safe. It's a way to stay away from fear and pain and all of this. But actually, sometimes just try it. Just try it and see what's the worst that can happen. What, you try it and actually after your 25-minute break, you don't want to come back? Well, at least you did 25 minutes work. We'll try again tomorrow. We'll do something different. Like, that is the sketch. You know what I mean? It's never as big a issue as I know I make it out in my head. So there's that. So the Pomodoro technique is kind of the bedrock, or the bedrock of how I approach my tasks. Yeah, I'd say that, especially if it's something that I've been avoiding, because that's the other thing is, let's say I had this yesterday. I've been doing this degree, and I just haven't quite got into the swing of my weekly blocks of time to allocate to the degree. So it's a bit sporadic. And yes, I was like, oh, I need to do this, but I can't be bothered. And I thought, right, let me just Pomodoro it, because even if I just do 25 minutes, it's still 25 minutes. It's great. Like, I'm proud of myself for doing anything. And that actually turned into a full, it was a 3-hour session that I did in the end. And I'm proud of myself for that. It wasn't what I was aiming for, but no, actually, yes, it was what I was aiming for. I'm proud of myself. God damn it, I'm proud of myself. So it can work in that way as well. If you just go, right, I'm just going to do the Pomodoro technique, rather than I'm going to go and tackle this big goal. And that brings me on to my next thing. So I think creating big goals is always a good thing. Like, having goals generally is useful. I don't think it's useful in every aspect of life. I think I certainly have made goals for many too many things in my life, and where I should have just, or I could have just let it be a little more free-flowing. And I'm still learning how to do that, because I'm a control freak and I like to think I'm in control, even though I know I'm not. I know I'm not. It's fine. So anyway, in terms of the goals, let's talk about like work goals or whatever. In these hyper-focus sessions, think about the big goal, but break that big goal down into smaller goals, basically, which I know is a really obvious thing to say. But the reason I say that is because hyperfocus, it can be such a problem when, I know I've had this, where I'm only looking at the bigger goal, and therefore I work myself to the point of burnout, to the point of absolute because I'm only looking at the bigger goal. So what I do now is I break a bigger goal down into much smaller steps. I'm talking super small steps. And then every day I will sit down. I've got a Notion document where, in fact, it's a database, funnily enough, where I will write down what my, like, here's how I think of it. In fact, I do this for the week. So I have like a diary that I plan my weeks, right? It's pen and paper and everything. It's fantastic. And in this diary, I have my one goal for the week. Like, if I could, and this is a personal thing because I know what my energy levels can be like. I know what my commitments can be like. I know how things can just go awry any given week. So I say to myself, right, if I could only achieve one thing this week and like, that would be a success, what would that one thing be? So every week I have one thing. This week, I think it's literally to do this episode, I think, because I knew that this week is going to be a bit mad, which it has been. So yeah, one thing. And if I do that one thing, I consider the week a success. Now, to break that down further, every day, like I say, I have this Notion document, this database where I will type in, right, okay, if I could only do one thing today to consider today a success, what would that one thing be? So today, it's recording this episode. You know, it could have been writing the script. It could have been I say script like it's a script, it's bullet points. Writing the bullet points. It could have been recording the episode. It could have been also editing it. It could be also uploading it. It could be also doing all the captions. It could be also doing the social media posts. Da, 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 da. Now that, even saying that, is slightly making my chest constrict, and I'm like, oh my God, it's too much, it's too much. No. So my one goal for today is just to record this. The editing, all of that, I can do that tomorrow. I have time. I have enough time. It's not as much time as I usually have, but it's enough time to get it done the way that if I needed to, it's fine. So my one thing for today is just record this episode. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm currently achieving my goal, but then I will also allow myself 2 other goals for the day. So that could be editing the episode and uploading the episode. What is my other goal today? I can't even remember. There's one, I'm going to see my family. That's one of my goals. It may seem silly, but that is a goal to me, spending time with my family. And I literally can't remember it's tidying up. I done washing. I haven't put it away yet. That's my other goal. So, but if those things don't get done, I mean, I'm going to see my family anyway, so that is what it is. But if those things get done, great. But if they don't, fine. My one thing is done. I am proud of myself for that. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you don't get your one thing done either. But that's all right. There's always tomorrow. So it's kind of this thing of like being kind to yourself, I think. The other thing that I do is I kind of try to break up my day with natural breaks, which is similar. Like, I suppose it's the Pomodoro technique is kind of a more rigid way of doing it, whereas natural breaks is another way of doing it. For instance, this episode, right? I'm not running a Pomodoro timer because currently we're at 31-ish minutes that we're on, and you would have heard some silly sound effect of a cat meowing to signal that I'm taking a break, but it's not appropriate. So what I'll do instead is I will take natural breaks. For instance, when I finish recording this episode, I will go, maybe I'll put my washing away, like just to really decompress and get out of the mindset and the headspace of being on, as it were. Because, you know, I have to be on when I'm doing this, otherwise it wouldn't be very interesting. I have to concentrate. It's quite simply that. So yeah, that's another way that you can do it, sort of like adding in natural breaks where the work allows it. So you can go make a meal or go make a coffee or all these other things I've said before. Another benefit of this that I find really useful is logging if you can find a way to log your progress, even if it's tiny amounts of progress. That is so useful, because it's one thing to, let's say the website example, it's one thing to build a whole website in a hyper-focus session. Amazing, great, good for you, that's great, wonderful. But it's just as beneficial to, because the thing is, as I say, if you're in a hyper-focus session, let's say you're creating a website, right? You do all the things, you have this hyper-fixation moment on this one button and it's taking you 2 hours to do, but you got it, and anyway, we move on and look, and all this problem is problem solving, and you've done it all, and it's like, oh my God, I'm exhausted, but there's a very good chance that you have wasted a lot of time by hyper-fixating on things that didn't matter, versus doing shorter bursts of work where you can come away and you can do, as I said before, a sense check and just noticing, is this useful? Am I still going in the right direction? And what I'm focusing on, is it actually beneficial? Is it worth the effort that I'm putting in, the time, the energy? At the end of the day, for me, there is a balance of, there is a certain amount of energy. If I go past a certain threshold with the amount of energy that I'm putting into something and the payoff does not match up, I will question that, and I will be like, do I need to do this? Can I manage this without this? Can I find a different way of doing this? I ask myself questions, and I think giving yourself that space is so important, and it will save you in the long term for sure. And as I say, by logging your progress, you can still see that you are making progress. Yes, you may not have hit this giant goal, maybe not yet, but just seeing any progress is so beneficial, because I found that quite, I can't remember what part of this question really hit me. What was it? Yeah, about the process being grueling, and that was it. The expectations on myself to execute. It really resonates with me, because it's all, no, it's not all, it's often self-inflicted. These sort of deadlines, these expectations, you know, this goal here that I've set for myself, because I've set it, I need to execute. And it's like, yes, I have a lot of admiration for that approach. I use that approach myself. I have used that approach myself. But as I say, to not allow yourself the space and the time to occasionally step back and just go, but is this still what I want? But am I still on track? But is this one thing I'm fixating on actually moving the needle in the direction I want it to go? And if you don't give yourself that space, you can often find, and by you, I mean me, I have often found myself in a place that I didn't want to be, but I was so fixated that I couldn't actually notice what was happening around me and the path that I was taking, if that makes sense. I don't know whether that makes sense to you, but I find also logging my progress does kind of just keep me, I'll tell you what it is for me. Logging progress makes me see the progress that I have made, because it's very easy just to see all the stuff that I haven't done yet, the long path that is ahead of me. But actually, if I look back at the long path behind me, I'm like, oh, no, do you know what? Yeah, this is working. These episodes, for example, like this, I think is episode 179, I think, I'm almost certain. And I started this in 2018, and have I been consistent? Well, globally, yes. But if you look back, there have been periods of time where I just stopped. I literally just stopped one day. I didn't even say. I'm trying to get better at saying if I'm taking a little break, but it was kind of, I had gotten to that point. It got to that point of burnout where I was just doing it. I was trying to do it in the most effective way. I was trying to, batch everything. I was trying to, make it as effective as possible. I was exhausted. And what that meant was I wasn't able to give myself space to analyze, was what I'm putting out there valuable? Not just to the audience, but to myself. Like, what was the reason? So the initial reason for starting this was just to share information. But as time's gone on, this has changed. And for instance, when COVID happened, everything I was talking about became very irrelevant, because it was just about surviving this once in a lifetime, hopefully, crazy, unprecedented situation. And I'm like, well, you're not going to want to hear me talk about being on tour, because we don't even know if we're going to go back on tour. And luckily I had that space to notice that. It did take me a minute, because I think I did publish a few episodes, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? What is important right now? And again, it was for the sake of information. Then it kind of shifted to for the sake of a little bit of camaraderie. That's when I was doing a lot of the live streams and stuff like that, and kind of this sense of community in a time that was very fraught with fractured situations, and everyone was finding it very difficult. Now what it's about is, again, it's always been and always will be about helping people to realize their goals and dreams. And if they want to be a professional musician or in the creative industry generally, hopefully this can either help share some insights of my experiences, but more than that, these days, it's about people just not feeling alone in their experience. Like, they're not the only one that's struggling. We all struggle in various ways. And then also, full transparency, like before, I would say it was about promoting my remote recording studio and all the work that I was doing there, and it worked really well. These days it's to help promote my coaching business and the fact that I work with people one-on-one. Of course it is. Like, we all have these things, but I would need the space to actually recognize that and make sure that I'm on track. And that is why I continue to do this myriad of reasons. And it helps that I can look back at this imperfect amount of episodes for the amount of time I've been doing it and go, yeah, do you know what? I'm still progressing. I'm still learning. I feel like still these episodes are getting better. They're getting slightly more coherent. She says, rambling on about something that she didn't actually mean to address, but here we are. And I'm finding my people, because the more people that kind of like either reach out or ask questions or support the Patreon, you are my people. I had a call with someone, a dude that potentially will do some coaching together at some point, maybe next month. And when I tell you, like 99% of people that I talk to, and he was one of them, it was like talking to myself. I was just like, oh my God, I so understand what you're feeling. Like, I can't even explain. I used to feel like that, or sometimes I still do feel like that, and this is how I do it, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just fantastic. It's so fantastic. And the fact that people are drawn to reach out to me and vice versa. And it's just like, you start at a point of, there's an understanding of how our brains work, and there will always be a similarity between all the people that I certainly work with or speak to. It's really nice. I really, really like it. So yeah, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go down that road, but like I said, I want to come back to this one thing that really like hit me, this expectations on yourself to execute. And I think, in fact, who was I talking to about this yesterday? I was talking to ChatGPT about this yesterday. I love chatting to ChatGPT, it's fascinating. But it's this idea of these expectations on yourself to execute, right? So I know what I'm like when I get like that with myself, and I can be very harsh, and I can be very demanding of myself, and I can be very the opposite of compassionate. What's that? Horrible. I can be horrible to myself. But if you look at it in a way, and I really hope this helps, imagine that it was someone else. Imagine that it was your sibling. Imagine it was your friend that is putting all this pressure on themselves. How would you talk to them? How would you treat them? Would it be with, yeah, you should be doing this now, all right, you're not doing enough? Excuse me. No, you'd probably be like, dude, it's fine. Like, just take a break. Take it easy. It's okay. Like, you're actually doing loads. It's all right. You're allowed. You're allowed to take a break. You're allowed to rest. And actually, rest is incredibly important. I know I've said it before. I'll say it again. I know that it's such a flippant way of saying it because I can't give it the gravitas that it deserves. And it's something that I'm continually learning. But in a way, you need to become, well, you don't need to do anything. You could become your best friend. In fact, right, here's a recommendation for a book. I've mentioned this before, but it really, really helped me in terms of my relationship with myself. It's called The Chimp Paradox by Dr. Steve Peters. Is a fantastic book of kind of like, it's essentially a model to understand your kind of, how do I put this? How to create a better relationship with yourself, I think, is a better way of putting it. It's a really interesting model, the chimp model that he uses. It really resonates with me. I use it almost daily to when I catch myself, and just to offer a bit of kindness to myself, or just to reassure myself, like, it's fine, it's all good. Because we often have these kind of visceral reactions to things that sometimes are very inappropriate to the situation. You know, we think everything's gonna end, and it's like, well, no, we're fine. We're fine. In the grand scheme of things, it will be okay. I understand why you're feeling that way, but you're safe. That's often what I tell myself. But I think that if you can, to this person, if you can exercise a little self-compassion on that front, and, you know, these expectations that you're putting on yourself, why do you, like, don't get me wrong, I think progress is great, but if it's to your detriment, I don't think that's good. I think there's a balance, but there needs to be a balance. You need to, if you want to put expectations on yourself, fine, like to execute, fine, but you also need to put expectations on yourself to look after yourself as well. There needs to be a balance, and until you get that, it will be a perpetual cycle of burnout. And like I say, the biggest danger for me, that aside from burnout and, you know, illness, like, you might actually imagine you get to a point where you actually can't do anything you want at all. Like, what's the point? So you may as well look after yourself now, allow that yin and yang of like work, rest, you know, expand your life in other ways, in terms of like, don't just obviously have other things that you're into as well. I find boxing is very good to regulate myself. That helps me massively. And Yeah, I think a little bit of self-compassion goes a long way. Again, this is something I'm still working on. I think I will continue to work on. I still have a hangover of expecting a lot from myself also. So I really do understand that. Sometimes I need people around me to just remind me, you're allowed to rest. This is the other thing, I think, because in the past I've had people like partners or whatever who would, when I would be trying to strive for things, would say, you're doing too much. Or it was very much put in that kind of, you need to stop what you're doing. And it was always met with resistance of like, you know, well, no, because, you know, I need to do this. And like this real aggression of like, and it just made me more determined to like burn myself out and essentially in the long run. But actually now with this sort of self-compassion, and I have people around me that instead will say, just so you know, you are allowed to rest. So I say that to you with compassion. You're allowed to rest. You're human, and just because you're striving for something, it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice your well-being. Your well-being will become part of your creative process, and it will allow you to express yourself in a more, I hate this word, authentic way. It's true, in a more honest way. Because I think if you're coming from a place of desperation, it's very hard to progress, to make art, to connect with people, definitely. There's a barrier that comes up when there's this desperation, and I know this, I've lived it. I look back at interactions, I look back at relationships I've had, and I just think, yeah, because there was this element of striving and just to, or like, what's that phrase? Anyway, to the detriment of everything else, striving for this goal, you literally can't leave room to, well, I was going to say connect with people, just to experience life, to be honest. There needs to be that light and shade. And whether you are hyper-focusing and setting these goals and these expectations because you're trying to avoid something else in your life, and I say that to myself, not necessarily to you, because that is what I was doing, I would say maybe it's worth looking at what that might be and maybe sitting with that. And rather than setting these goals to escape that, maybe turn towards it just a little bit. You ain't got to go full in for a hug or fight it, or I wouldn't suggest fighting anyway, but maybe just like, you know, take a little glimpse, and you can go back to your hyper-focus work, but just take a little glimpse now and then, like, oh, all right, you're there, okay. And then maybe you get braver and maybe you do face it eventually. I'm in that process right now. It's hard. It's really hard. It's hard, I was going to say, but it's worth it. It's still in the very hard stage for me. But there's other things that I've faced that, oh my goodness, life-changing, amazing, worth it. Like, just some of the best things I've ever done in my life have been because I've faced something that I was trying to avoid so hard in every single way. But although facing it was painful and difficult, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, really. Oh man, wouldn't change it. Wouldn't change. Might have changed how it all happened, but wouldn't change it. So anyway, I'm going to leave you on that note because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to start going down tangents that are not relevant. But if you have, I hope that this helped you, first of all, lovely person that reached out. If you have a question yourself that you'd like me to answer in a future episode, please head over to emilydrums.com/AMA, as in ask me anything. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to share it, please do feel free to like, share and subscribe. Also, please do leave a review if you feel compelled to do so. It really does help. And if you would also like to be a Patreon supporter like lovely Stephen Pridmore, then you can if you go to patreon.com/EmilyDrums. And if you'd like to see me on Instagram, it's at HeyEmilyDrums. I'm almost done, I promise. And if you would like to reach out for some one-on-one coaching, if you just go to emilydrums.com. Anyway, I'm gonna love you and leave you on that note. I'm not gonna lie, I'm proud of myself for doing this episode today, because it's been 2 days in the making of building myself up to do it, and here we are. And I'm actually quite happy with this one, I feel. Yes, it was a little wayward, but it is who I am. What can I tell you? So now I'm gonna go and fold some washing. How exciting. Right, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, wherever you're up to. I just spat, so that's perfect. I will see you next week for another episode. All right, lots of love to you. See you later. Bye.